Committee Chairman, Reince Priebus.
Well, thank you very much, and I know I've got to, I'm not going to, I can talk loud enough without being married to the podium here, but I know I've got a bizarre name. You probably wonder, what in the world is this? You know, the chairman with a name like Reince Priebus. I always tell people, my name's what happens when a Greek and a German get married. It's a kind of a disaster. My kids' names are Jack and Grace, so you can see what my reaction was to my name. I wasn't going to do that to our kids. So Sean's right, and by the way, thank you, Sean, for all the work that you did in Massachusetts in a 2-year battle to make sure that schools are saying the Pledge of Allegiance in Massachusetts. Those are the types of things that really, really makes a difference for our cause, because it shows that we care about our country, that teenagers are patriotic, that the bottom line matters, and you know, in many ways this is a battle in many ways between good and evil, and so that's great work that you've done, and really important. So thank you very much for that. And Barbie, thank you for your work with the Teenage Republicans. You know, when I was in Wisconsin, we had a group, and we didn't have TARS. We had something called the Student GOP, and I was involved in that. And a lot of people have asked me how I got involved in politics. And you know, my grandfather said half my family lived in Greece, and my grandfather was Greek, and he had a lot to do with a party over there called the New Democracy Party. And in Greece, there's only 3 parties. There's the Communists, the Socialists, the New Democracy Party. And he had a big New Democracy flag out on the balcony. But next to that flag in Athens, Greece, was a big American flag next to it. And I can just remember that growing up, 8 years old, that my grandfather really loved America and everything about America. And he would talk about anything that had to do with American politics. And he loved it all. He didn't really get involved with Republican, Democrat, but I knew that everything about this country he loved, and he wasn't from here. And then from there, I just really got involved even before I was a teenager, but certainly when I was a teenager, and if I had TARS at that time, I would have definitely been involved with that. But I got involved in our local party too, our county party. And we had a couple people in the county party that really, as you know, there are some people who really do love it when young people get involved in politics, and they will go out of their way to get you involved. And you know, that these people made me feel part of the organization, even though they were 5 times my age. But it was important, and I got involved, and I was putting up the yard signs and doing the phone calls and kind of just earning my place in the county party. And then I got involved in college as the college Republican president. After that, I went off to law school. I worked for our governor in Wisconsin, a guy by the name of Tommy Thompson. But then I went down to law school in Miami. I got to be really good friends with Marco Rubio, who's a great guy, and obviously a real star in our party nationally, and somebody who's really changing the landscape, really, of the debate in this country. And then came back to Wisconsin, and good friend Paul Ryan decided to run for Congress. I was his congressional chairman for a long time, and then moved on to working on the state party. You all know that Wisconsin, not too long ago, was a very blue state. And obviously, when you have a state like Wisconsin, which is somewhere between Minnesota and Vermont, in how democratic it is, it takes a lot of work. But I've always thought that there are 3 things that were needed in our party to rebuild our party at a time when we were down and out. The first thing that we needed was people of their word to run for office. That's number 1. Real basic stuff, right? I mean, people who say what they're going to do and they go and do it. People of their word to run for office. Second thing we needed to do is to win. And quit talking about winning and just go win. And then the third thing, and the hardest thing, to govern like you campaign. Govern like you campaign, which is proof, it's a validation that the first thing that we needed, people of their word, was actually true. So to get to number 1, you have to prove number 3. And that's what we're trying to do here every day in Washington as Republicans, which is to govern like we campaign. We did a few things right, I think, in Wisconsin. Number 1, we put quality on the field. Quality candidates make all the difference in the world. People like Scott Walker, obviously Ron Johnson, who beat Russ Feingold. We had Paul Ryan. I don't know if you know who Sean Duffy is, up in the 7th Congressional District up north. And we put quality on the field. We also raised a lot of money. And the last thing we did was we executed on the ground. And I got to tell you, the teenage Republicans were a big part of what happened in Wisconsin. We had a state that put together over the last 2 months of the campaign the most phone calls, the most door-to-door knocks, the most voter-to-voter contacts, and this is all tracked over the internet, than any state in the entire country. And I'm not saying percentage-wise, but actually more contacts in Wisconsin than Florida, California, Pennsylvania, Ohio. It's incredible. We put an army on the ground, and that's what the Republican Party does. You know, I happen to think that we do a real lousy job sometimes of explaining what the Republican Party does. We're the army on the ground. We're the organization that sends the absentee ballots to voters. We call them, tell them to send in their ballots. Call them again a week later, a week after that. Then we're knocking on their door, making sure that we're identifying our voters, contacting our voters, making sure they get to the polls to help our candidates get over the finish line. And you're all a huge part of that. And I know you're going to help us get there in 2012. I happen to believe in this election in 2012, with this president, that we're in a battle for freedom in America. That's where we're at. I told you I had a son named Jack who's 6. When Jack's my age, it's going to cost 42 cents on every dollar made in America just to run the federal government. I mean, if you can imagine 42 cents on every dollar just to run the government, that's a battle for freedom. We're losing jobs. You're all going to need to get a job one day. You're going to need an economy that's robust. You're going to need an economy that gives you options after you graduate from college. And that means that in order to get to that place, 10 years from now, 8 years from now, 5 years from now, wherever you're at, whatever age you are, it starts today in Washington to make sure that you and your brothers and sisters and your families and my kids, that they have the opportunities that I had. And what's really sad is that for the first time in our history, most Americans believe that their kids are not going to have a better future than they have. And that has to change. We're in a battle for freedom in this country. You know, a country that has to surrender its sovereignty to its bondholders can't guarantee prosperity or freedom to anybody. But that's where we are in America. This debt ceiling debate, right? That's all you hear about. That is just a small glimpse into what it means to at least surrender a portion of your sovereignty to your bondholders. Nothing's getting done. There is no debate over how to create more jobs now. We're only talking about how we can strike a deal to borrow more money to make sure that we can pay our bondholders. That's not a good future. That's not the future that we want for America. So what we need to do, and what I need to do as chairman of the RNC, is to make sure that we put together a functional, operational Republican National Committee, raising the dollars necessary to make sure that when it comes time to execute on the ground, that army on the ground next year, that we can put people on the ground, that we can pay for the resources that we need on the ground to make sure that we make Barack Obama a one-term president, save America, and in the process, save our party.